This is the fourth day of this October 1981 7-day sesshin. And we will continue with this first letter of Basui, taken from the 3 pillars of Zen. But before we do this, let's read a brief passage from Hakuin, which so many people at so many times have reported to be very helpful when read in a sesshin, when read outside a sesshin for that matter. This passage is about hara, this area not to be specifically delineated, localized. It's this whole lower part. It's a fact that we do have abdominal respiratory muscles. When a little baby is born, that's where the baby breathes. One can observe it. Little belly goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Babies can cry for long hours, poor things, but they don't get hoarse. Don't have to clear their throats, because they breathe down there. There's no tension anywhere else. In this area down here, there's no brain. There's no memory down there. But there's great vitality. It's where we were born. If we give birth to children, it's from there that new life comes forth. If one practices to become a singer, this is where one works all the time, working with this diaphragm. The teacher will say, more support. You have no support. More support. Don't sing from your vocal cords or with your chest, and you'll be an abomination to the audience. No one wants to listen to you because they suffer with you. So you learn to work down here, to use these abdominal respiratory muscles, the diaphragm. I went through such training. I never really knew what the diaphragm was. It was always a great enigma to me, but one learned to work down here. If these muscles shoulder some of the work of questioning, of breathing, and shouldering is a good word, so it's not all in the shoulders, then there's a possibility for a wakeful and yet quiet brain. It's not a guarantee, it's not a definite interrelationship, but there's a possibility for it. Maybe you know that if you're very sleepy at night and somebody tells you a joke and you laugh, you can't sleep after that. You're too awake if it's really a hearty laughter. Belly laugh. So in questioning who or moo, can these abdominal respiratory muscles do some of this questioning down there, without immediately making a thing out of it, a compulsion and a knot. Not to create a knot down there. And yet can something come to life down there. Something becomes sensitized, energized. It does happen very often on its own without any intention. If there's really deep questioning, without trying to figure everything out. The figuring out sits up here in the brain. It's the function of the brain to figure things out in a limited way and in a limiting way. One finds one gets a belly ache, then to let up on it. But nobody has died from a bellyache. It's not that that much of a problem. It's who or mu. Not calling it hara or tanden or what have you. Abdominal respiratory muscles, we using these words, we're talking about something. But when you question, rather not knowing what it is, but what is it? Allowing it to work on its own, which it will. It has when you were born. Nobody had to tell you about hara. Let's read these few sentences from Hakuin, which were really given to him by an old Taoist sage that he found out high in the mountains someplace. It's a beautiful story. Not going to go into it right now. This old hermit sage talked about introspection, looking into oneself. And the scholars are at a loss of what he really meant by this. There's a Japanese name, it escapes me right now. Introspection, naikan, introspection, looking into oneself. It's not really any enigma, is it? What does it mean to look into oneself? It certainly doesn't mean analysis. Thought application, figuring out. It's to be what is there without resistance. Now this is the true. This is what Hakuin writes. The true practice of introspection consists of this contemplation. Doesn't mean now that you have to memorize this and contemplate this. Just listen. Can you listen? Without doing anything. Maybe the doing comes on its own. The area below my navel, down to my loins and the sole of my feet is all Joshu's mu. What principle can this mu possibly have? The area below my navel, down to my loins and the soles of my feet is all my original face. Where can there be nostrils in this original face? Nostrils is by which the bullock, the water buffalo, is led, pulled, guided. Where can there be nostrils in this original face? Or you could say, no nose needed down there. The area below my navel, down to my loins and the soles of my feet, is all the pure land of my own mind. With what can this pure land be adorned? The area below my navel, down to my loins and the soles of my feet, is all the Buddha Amida in my own body. What truth can this Amida preach? The area below my navel, down to my loins and the soles of my feet, is all the village where I was born. What letter is needed from that native village? The last sentence we read in the letter to a man from Kumasaka is Man, however, can't bring himself to believe that his own mind is itself the great completeness. Please always include in himself, herself. Sometimes people have told me it's quite strange to work on koans, the man hanging from the tree. It's also a woman hanging from a tree. If it's simpler to enter into this whole thing that way, by all means do it. It's a cultural conditioning which has pervaded much of the past, east and west, that only the man counts and is mentioned. The woman is there to give birth to him. And watch out, as one Hindu writing, one early Brahmanic writing says, watch out of woman. There's too much life emanating from her loins. Be careful of her. It's so easily to project, isn't it? So, however, man or woman can't bring him or herself to believe that this own mind, his or her own mind, I won't do this all the time, it becomes clumsy and very unnecessary. If you're not caught up in this, it won't be a problem to you. Just see through cultural conditioning. Man isn't any better off than woman, or worse off for that matter. Man, however, can't bring himself to believe that his own mind is the great completeness realized by the Buddha, so he clings to superficial forms. Clings to superficial forms. Is one aware of that? And looks for truth outside this mind, striving to become a Buddha through ascetic practices and many other practices. Just recently read from Wang Po or Obaku, where he lists ceremonies, rituals, paramitas, all these practices which are just a convenient way to get one through samsara. But, now here we start afresh, but Basui continues, as the illusion of an ego self does not vanish, as the illusion of an ego self does not vanish, man must undergo intense suffering in the three worlds. The three worlds being worlds of, called the subhuman worlds. Animals, hungry ghosts, and demons. I don't know what's sub about that. They're all here in this human world. Let's talk about this illusion of ego self. The question comes up all the time, what is this ego? Is there any way out of it? One person several years ago came to first counseling, at which it was pointed out how the me, the images of oneself, ride the saddle of one's life, the saddle. And to observe that, to look into it, to see it, to become familiar with it. And after a week or so, this person came back in tears, and she said, I've observed it very carefully, and there's nothing I do that is not selfish or self-centered or self-enclosing. And with that, the work began for this person, the fuel for the practice. Somebody else, there may have been despair or forgetting about the whole thing. I don't want to see that. I don't want to listen to her anymore. Before, I lived fairly contented. Now, to see all that, ugh. We've talked endlessly about the images one has, how one wants to look to other people, how one feels compelled to look to other people. It's not voluntary. It's been instilled into one painfully. One has forgotten about that process of installation early in life. To be good, to be this, to be that. So the parents, the teachers, the peers, the priests are pleased, are satisfied, approve, give their blessings, bestow their love, pat one on the head or the back. Ego, self, meaning insufficiency, incompleteness. That is the reality of the me. It's incompleteness. Because it's ideas, images that have been growing up, collected in memory. Memories of incompleteness. Those of you who've had this rare occasion to be faced with a total emergency and respond to that totally without thinking about it. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? One just jumps, puts out the fire, or jumps into the water, pulls somebody out. One person once said he overturned a whole truck that had landed on some people. Very often, one finds there's very little memory of that. It's the ego that keeps the ledger, the logbook, and always refers back to itself, to its own log, to its own memories. And it's captured in that, captivated. It is that. Always responding from memory. The image of oneself, one's goals, one's standards, etc. Can't go into the whole thing of it, always can only talk about part of it. But can you listen completely? So that you're not the part listening. Ego is insufficiency, inadequacy, impotence. Because of the very fact that it's a splinter from the whole. A thought split off from the stream of thoughts, or a bunch of thoughts, thinking, I am this entity, I am something separate, I am something permanent, or at least I hope I will be something permanent. And yet this insufficiency and inadequacy is there, it's felt. Who doesn't feel it? And out of this feeling comes all kinds of willful action to complete oneself, to fill oneself, to be something, someplace. It may not be somebody famous or great. One person just told me today or yesterday that growing up with a stern father, his image became that of being a helpless son, and that seemed to appease the father, at least in his mind. One could never outdo the father. One couldn't become something that was more than the father. And now this became very evident in this work. How will this be for the father and the mother? Will they lose their son and the guilt that comes with that? Instantly, because it's so deeply ingrained. there's no end to the variety of things one does to try to appease or fulfill this feeling of inadequacy and inner emptiness, insufficiency. One of the ways, of course, is to join something, some organization, political, religious, social. And then the ego becomes that. That's then the new ego, is this organization. That's me, which I have to defend, which I will defend. With which I will identify, and in which I will find security. One of the securities, interestingly enough, is always a certain garment that one wears. Not always, but very often, has to go with that. Thinking back of my childhood, there was this, I got to school at the age of 5, that's when Hitler came into power. And very soon there was this Hitlerjugend, which was the youth movement. For girls it was called BDM, Bund Deutscher Mädchen, which is the Union of German Girls. And you bet your life this is where I wanted to be. That's where I wanted to belong. Especially because of the uniform. You know what they were wearing? Black skirts, white blouses. They were special. They had 2 pockets here right over the breasts with buttons. So important. An open collar. And then to beat it all. You know, I could still get a black skirt, although my mother would not buy me a black skirt. Navy. Had to be navy. My mother was Jewish. And of course, we couldn't belong to this organization. Us kids. And many others. The heartache, you can't imagine it. But let me complete this uniform. I never put my hands on one of those things, but I think it was a black square, or else it was a triangle. And you put it around your neck. You put up the collar, then you slid this thing under, you know, like men putting on a tie. This was also a terrific thing for a girl. It's something you couldn't do, put on a tie. How I would have loved to put on a tie at least. But here, this was very close, but I couldn't get to it, because I was half Jewish. So then you put the collar back down, and a little triangle showed in the back. And then under the outline of this white open collar, there were these 2 loose ends, and then there was a leather knot, endless knot. It was woven, it was beautiful, strands of leather, and it was hollow, and through that you put those 2 black ends and you pushed up that knot. Wow! That's what you wore. Mondays and Saturdays, to begin the week, to end the week, and on all festive occasions, of which there were not few. Hitler came to town, or some big shot came to town, and everybody wore this except those poor outsiders who would have loved to wear it. Because this was not all that was to this uniform, because you could rise up in the ranks. And then there were braided cords. And how one admired people with those braided cords, each color signifying a new status achieved. You have the similar in the Boy Scouts, I believe. Doesn't there go different insignia? Oh, and like in the army, it's the same thing all over. I once read an account of a woman who had become a main functionary in one of the deathly concentration camps. She was writing about her youth, her teens. It seemed to be a very honest account. She said in her teens, she was on fire with what she can only call religious fervor. And she wanted to give her whole life to something. So strong was this fervor, wanting to give up her life for something large, meaningful. So she joined this movement. And she rose up in the ranks till she could rise no higher. And then she assumed other functions. Totally propagandized. Till she ended up where she ended up. Not thinking anymore what she was doing. It was all for some greater purpose of creating a pure race or some such thing. Of course, there are the martial arts. You start out with a white belt, and then comes, I guess, the yellow belt, and the purple and the green, and then there's that black belt. I talked to a person once. He came to our group, sitting group in Buffalo, and if I remember right, he said, there's no ego in putting this on. It doesn't mean anything. But it means a lot to a lot of people. And this one's so sure it doesn't mean anything. In all of this, whatever one does, there must be what Wei Nang calls perfect view, total view. How does one affect others? And one does affect all humankind with everything one does. Like a raindrop falling to the ocean. Affects all the waters. Everywhere. So each one must come to clarity by himself or herself about how one's actions affect others. One takes responsibility. One has that responsibility. One does not have responsibility over how others respond. But how others see things, that's everybody else's problem. It's a very delicate thing. All beings without number, all humankind is oneself. And yet we're so divided, inside and outside. Why? What makes for division? What contributes to division? And what is the end of division? Or is it impossible? May not be possible in the world at large. It may be outside of our control. But within each one of us, what is division and what is the end of division? possible. Does one need to find out? Is it an absolute necessity to find this out? As the illusion of an ego self does not vanish, man must undergo intense suffering in the three worlds. This is talking about one's own suffering. This is how one maybe gets moving first here. I want to get out of this. I don't want it, but it's not only oneself. As some people get to feel very intensely in a sesshin, they feel beyond their own personal sorrow. One comes in touch with the sorrow of humanity, which must be felt. One must be in touch with it. It is beyond the personal. It is universal. Can one be in touch with it and not be totally overwhelmed with it, so one is rendered incapable, paralyzed? Or does rather out of this spring new energy and love and compassion? Not just for my little group, my little this or that, for everyone and everything. Without any limitation, no barriers anywhere. Basui continues, he is like the one who became sick because he had swallowed a baby snake. Various remedies were of no avail, but he recovered instantly upon realizing the basic truth. So just look into your own mind. No one can help you with nostrums. In a sutra, the Buddha said, if you would get rid of your foe, you have only to realize that that foe is delusion. What is delusion? All our words and images and memories. For instance, our idea of success and failure. Am I going to succeed in this sesshin? Am I going to be a failure? This has no room in mu and hu. Has no place. It's how we run ourselves and our run in this world. Gloating over success and smarting under failure. But the success never satisfies. And failures never seem to come to an end for one who thinks he's a failure to start out with. It's all a process of thinking, and then acting from this thinking with some willpower to do something about oneself. The doer is that oneself. All you have to realize is that that foe is delusion, thinking, trying to figure it out, trying to think it out, taking your refuge in your thoughts, in your memories, in what you want to happen, which is anticipating a future that hasn't arrived, projected also from memory, from what you've read and heard and experienced. We're sitting here, maybe with an aching, ailing body, trembling with fear. Who? Nothing excluded. That's what it is right now. Who or moo? No escape into thinking of better times. This earth where you stand, this cushion where you sit, this very body, who, moo? What am I? What is it? I don't know. But can I find out? By being that, without any separation. This is the Dharma gate, not something projected or imagined in the future. Basui continues, all phenomena in the world are illusory. They have no abiding substance. Sentient beings no less than Buddhas are like images reflected in the water. That sound, listen, is that illusory? If you wonder what it is and who makes it and why do they have to do it while we have Teisho here, then you can't even hear it. To just say everything is illusory is just another sentence added to the repertoire of sentences one already has. One must know what it means, something is illusory. That flower there, is that illusory? Because you can say, and here you're thinking again, yeah, it'll wilt, it'll dry up pretty soon, it'll be dust. But that's not illusory. Dust is dust. Dust is not the flower, obviously. Sentient being no less than Buddhas are like images reflected in water. Yeah, one constantly talks about sentient beings or Buddhas. Must become a Buddha. Right now I'm a sentient being. In the past, a Buddha was a sentient being. I don't know, all these sentences. These are reflections of the thinking process. Who am I? Right now, this instant, what is mu? Without resorting to reflections on Buddhas and sentient beings. One, Basui continues, one who does not see the true nature of things mistakes shadow for substance. Mistakes the image, the description, the explanation for the real thing. The real thing can never be described. It's what it is. Human being, this instant. Of course, again, you can say, well, he can get old. She can be getting old and die. Of course, human beings get old and die. Seeing an old human being, seeing a dying person, does that seeing get old? Is that seeing old or young? is listening, new or old. That is to say, Basui continues, in Zazen, the state of emptiness and quiet, which result from the diminution of thought, is often confused with one's face before one's parents were born. It comes to a state of emptiness, there are no thoughts. Sometimes it's mistaken for understanding. Most people get scared when that comes up and say, hey, something is missing. I feel so empty. What does this mean? And a word comes out of it. And then one clings to the word and spins it on. And the word arouses reaction, fear, or interest. When there is no thought, when there's this emptiness, can one abstain from immediately transmuting it into a thought? But question more. Right there, without retreating. There's no place to retreat to except into thinking. This is where one needs to work. Right there. Questioning, not knowing. Not knowing. It may not be this emptiness which has ruled one's life by wanting to be filled and filled and filled, or escaped from. It may not turn out to be that at all. But you cannot expect, because anything you expect is something you've already known. So you're back thinking. Moo-hoo. You must advance, Basui says, you must advance beyond the stage where your reason is of any avail. Can one realize that? And therefore refrain. No, not this, not that. I will not get into this. I'm putting it into words, but it can be a wordless work, a wordless movement, avoiding leaks and blind alleys. One has understood reason is to no avail. It's no refuge. Which doesn't mean it doesn't have its proper function in one's life. Got a very important function to think reasonably. To be able to reason intelligently. And not just follow a line. But here in this work, there's nothing to reason out. In this extremity, where reason is of no avail, not knowing what to think or what to do, ask yourself, who is the master? That was his call. And you ask yourself, who's Mu? Who am I, or what am I, or what's Mu? Or just Mu or who? He will become your intimate only after you've broken a walking stick made from a rabbit's horn, or crushed a chunk of ice in fire. a walking stick made from a rabbit's horn, you know what that is. A rabbit has no horns. So how could there be a walking stick be made from it? So it means something that's impossible. That's what we were talking about yesterday or sometime. Can one do what's impossible? What seems impossible to reason? He will become your intimate. This very you, this very mu. That walks and acts and talks and is silent freely without any images, without any compulsion, without any enclosure or wall. The wall always being of our own making. Thinking something is impossible, that's a wall. Thinking I can't do it, that's a wall, that's a gate. A barrier. If you don't think, allow all that to be. You don't know what it is. It may crumble on its own. Because you're not supporting it through thinking and worrying and wanting to do something about it. Tell me now, says Basui, who is the most intimate of yours? Today is the 8th of the month, tomorrow is the 13th. Or we can say, today is the 7th day of Zashin, tomorrow is the 1st. No, today is the 1st. No today, no first, just who am I? Or what am I? We'll stop here for today. The 4 vows.
All beings without number.
I vow to liberate endless blind passions. I vow to uproot Dharma penetrate the great way of the Buddha. I vow to attain.